My dear friends, there is a song that says that great things happen when God mixes with us. Great things happen when God mixes with us. And we can see this in reality in the stories of these two simple people, Peter, who was just a simple Galilean fisherman, and Paul, who was also an enthusiastic Pharisee who was bent on persecuting all the Christians, is the one who actually spearheaded the first persecution of the Christians. We find that in Acts of the Apostles chapter 8, and how God intervened in the lives of these two people, the fisherman and this Pharisee, and changed them totally. And today we celebrate them as models of faith, as people on whom the foundation of the church has been laid. And we know from the story of Paul, his encounter with God on the way to Damascus, and he was totally transformed. He changed from negative to being positive completely, and he was ready to die for the faith that he was ready to give his life persecuting. Great things happen when God mixes with man. Great things happen when God comes down upon this altar at the consecration, and the bread and the wine becomes the body and blood of Christ. Great things happen when the priest puts that little drop of water into the wine and say, let us participate in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. Great things happen. And in fact, even when God intervenes in the lives of these people, they had to go through what it means to become Christians. And we see Paul expressing this in his second letter to Timothy, that the Lord stood by me and gave me strength. Even when I was in persecution, he rescued me from the lion's mouth. He went through a lot in order to be able to give his life for Jesus, for his faith. And even though he was persecuting this faith, in the end, he was ready to die for this faith, and we celebrate their martyrdom today. Peter, on the other hand, we hear in the gospel, he stands to answer on behalf of the rest of the disciples the question Jesus had asked personally to each and every one of them. What do you say I am? Who do you say I am? Not what. Who do you say I am? And he was expecting them to give their own personal experiences, but Peter stands and answers on behalf of the rest of the disciples. And that is what makes him the leader of the church. Jesus makes him and declares that on him he will found his church. And in Luke's gospel, there is something really that we ignore. One of the words, the prayer that Jesus made, in Luke's gospel chapter 22 verse 32, he says, I pray for you, Peter, that you may not fail. I pray for you. He did not pray for the rest. He said, in John's gospel chapter 17, we hear Jesus praying for the rest of the apostles. But in Luke's gospel chapter 22 verse 32, he's praying for Peter. He said, Peter, I pray that your faith may not fail, and when you have overcome this, then you would come to strengthen your brothers. Your faith will not fail, so that your brothers will look up to you. That was ratifying already the ministry that Jesus had handed on to Peter of founding the church. And how did this happen? Now we find the third arrest of Peter in Acts of the Apostles. This is in the first reading of today. That is the third time Peter is being arrested. He was arrested in Acts of the Apostles chapter 4, chapter 5, and now chapter 12. And what happens in this, and I think this is very symbolic, because now the church is the new Israel. So if it is the new Israel, it has to go through what the Israelites had to go through. Remember, it says in the first reading that when Herod beheaded James, the brother of John, and after he had beheaded him, he was pleased by the fact that the Jews were very happy with that. So he arrested Peter. And when he arrested Peter, it was on, I don't know before, or on the feast of the unleavened bread. And the unleavened bread is very important for the history of the Israelites, because when they were about to be delivered from Egypt, the word of God says that they ate that evening unleavened bread. And Herod kept him in prison because of the Passover. He said, when we celebrated when we celebrate the Passover, then Peter will be arrested and persecuted and possibly killed. Now it's so important that Peter is being arrested on the feast of the unleavened bread, but also awaiting the coming of the Passover, because the Passover is so important for the history of the Jewish people. On that night, the angel of deliverance came over the land of Egypt. That Peter is laying down, is in prison on that day, on the unleavened bread. And what did God say to the Israelites on the feast of the unleavened bread? No, put on your sandals, gird your loins, pick up your staff, and be on haste. And these are the same words that the angel said to Peter when he was about to deliver him from prison. Because Peter is in chains, he has a tight security, 4 squad of soldiers watching over him, 2 watching closely next to him, and 2 outside the gate. And they are taking turns to watch over him, meaning that it is impossible for Peter to break through. But again, the angel appeared at the right time. Just as it was impossible for the people of Israel to get out of Egypt, it was impossible for them to get through the Red Sea, but the angel appeared. In Exodus chapter 14, verse 19, we hear that the angel came behind them. He watched over them even as they crossed the Red Sea. And therefore, Peter was miraculously delivered from the chains. The chains were broken. He was thinking that there was something that was happening. It was just a vision, but there was a key to that. The Christian community that was outside, the word of God says that they were praying for Peter. They were interceding for Peter. And because of that, the angel of deliverance appeared. And when he appeared, Peter thought it was a dream. And even though it was an impossible situation, just like the crossing of the Red Sea was an impossible situation, God made it possible. And it is only when he appeared outside, the word of God says that the gates opens by themselves. And there is another symbol for that, but it opens by itself. And he found himself out, and then he realized it was really a reality. Just like the people of Israel realized it was a reality after they crossed the Red Sea and they sang the great hymn in exaltation and glorifying God. How does this relate to us? My dear friends, it's true we also find ourselves in situations that have become impossible. And Peter goes through this because God knows we would also go through such situations. We find ourselves in situations where we are against the wall and there is no way of reacting. There is nothing we can do. Just like Peter sitting there with 2 chains on his hands and 2 guards standing by him day and night and 2 other guards standing outside. There is no way out for him. What really helped Peter was the intercession of the Christians outside. They were praying for him day and night. They fought these battles on their knees. They did not fight it with weapons. They went on their knees and they prayed. They fasted. They spent the whole night in prayer for the deliverance of Peter. And it did happen. So my friends, it is true there are many people who go through such situations. Maybe even we are going through such situations at the moment, and we do not know how it's going to happen. We don't know how we are ever going to get out of the situations in which we find ourselves. The solution to that is to get on our knees and surrender. And say, by myself I cannot do it, but I know with God all things are possible. By myself, I cannot manage to get out of these chains. By myself, I can't get out of the medical situation in which I find myself. But I will get on my knees, and God himself would fight this battle. Remember when they crossed the Red Sea, in Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, he says No, yours is only to watch, and this battle I will fight for you. Ours is only to watch in prayer. Jesus invites us to pray, to stay a while with him in prayer, and he will deliver us from the hands of our enemies and the impossible situations we find ourselves. Let us therefore continue to ask, through the intercession of Saints Peter and Saints Paul, for the grace to persevere, especially during suffering, but perseverance in prayer.
Kiss us, mother, kiss your children. Bring God's blessings from above. With your mantle blue enfold us in your gentle holy love. See the darkness dissipating, hear the triumph.